So I'm not going to tell you too much, obviously, because obviously we're heading there towards later in the day. But what I will tell you is that it sits at its highest point in Scotland. So that makes it the most strategic castle in Scotland. Also known that if you hold the key to Stirling Castle, you hold the key to the country. It's very situated upon an extinct volcano, which is quite a common thing here in Scotland. Most of our castles and palaces are. If you then look to the left of the castle itself, you'll see a tower that is dedicated to Scotland's most brave warrior, William Wallace. So that is the Wallace Monument. And of course we'll be talking about him later when we come back towards Stirling Castle. I don't want to tell you too much straight away, because if I do that, we'll be sitting in silence later today. We're going to come off here, we're going to come off the motorway, we're going to do a little bit of country driving. This is what I wanted to do for you, because obviously, as I said, we will be back in Edinburgh later. I don't want you to feel as if you're shortchanged. So normally we would continue driving on the motorway, but I'm going to come off for you and do a little bit of countryside driving. At the end of the day, you've not really paid to see our motorways or freeways, whatever you like to call it. You've paid to see the country itself, so it makes sense to do this. So yes, again, please make sure you get your seatbelts fastened. I should have said earlier during our health and safety chat, it is by UK law that everyone must wear your seatbelt. So please make sure you get your seatbelts on and you don't stand up whilst the bus is moving. This is where I tend to hear a lot of clicking because no one's wearing their seatbelts. But please.
Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hulda Pokolo. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for being loyal. In today's video, we are going through the countryside of Scotland, to be specific, Glasgow. We're going to Loch Lomond. I hope I said that right, but they're going to give us a lot of history about Britain, and we are also going to feed the hairy coos. But because I don't want to make the video too long, I'm going to cut them into two. So stick around if you want to hear about Britain's history, and then watch the next video if you want to see the hairy coos.
Okay guys, so as you can see at the minute, we are in the midst of the Scottish countryside. What we're technically doing is literally crossing the country, sort of adjacent from Edinburgh over to Glasgow. We're not going neither further north or south at the minute. So we're just kind of heading towards the through the central belt of Scotland, heading through this beautiful countryside. We're technically on the cusp of our national park, which I'll tell you about as well when we're driving through the national park. In terms of the national park, so we actually have two national parks in Scotland. The first one, which we're currently driving through at the moment, this is Loch Lomond and the Trossachs. Trossach is a Gaelic term for forestry or nature, and there's a massive difference between both national parks. Millions of years ago, even up to this day as well, Scotland is made up of two different plates. On the west hand side of where we are just now, this is the Atlantic plate. You can expect a lot more forestry, a lot more greenery through this national park, and a lot more wildlife in comparison to the east. The East National Park is called the Cairngorms, and that is slightly further up in the Eastern Highlands, so we won't actually get an opportunity to see that today. But the kind of wildlife, the types of colours that you'll see in our national parks as well, which you can kind of see already. You'll see quite a lot of purples, being heather and thistle. There's quite a lot of weeds as well, which are actually purple. Quite a lot of people ask what the kind of taller sort of plant is with quite a lot of purple to it. That is a weed, and I can never remember the actual name. But you'll see quite a lot of yellow as well, to do with our gorse, which we call rapeseed in the UK. Not a particularly nice name, but that's what it is. And that's where we extract our vegetable oil. On the left and right, obviously, you've got hay bales. You've got quite a lot of hay to do with farming. But something that's mostly grown in Scotland, of course, is barley. Why barley? Because that's the first ingredient we need for our very famous whiskies. In to do with the wildlife as well, both national parks at the minute are massively overpopulated by deer. We have two different types of deer. We have red deer and we have reindeer. Reindeer in Scotland we call stag. We then have an abundance of sheep. There's actually, this is fact, this is genuine, not a lot of people believe this, but there's more sheep in Scotland than there are people. That's true. There's a huge amount of cows, dairy cows, normal cows, and then of course we have our very famous traditional Highland cows, which in Scotland we call hairy goo, because they're very hairy and are cows. Has anyone managed to see a Highland cow yet? Yes. Has anyone not managed to see a Highland cow yet? Yes. Well, if you behave, I'll take you to feed some later.
Oh, nice. We will behave.
We then have foxes, badgers, horses, things like that. The other day I was asked if we have tigers, and I could have just stopped the bus and run away. No, we do not have tigers in Scotland. The only place you'll see tigers in Scotland, of course, is in Edinburgh Zoo. In terms of wolves, we used to have wolves in our national parks, we used to have bears in our national parks, but both parks at the minute are massively popular for camping and hiking. So we took the bears and the wolves out to make it slightly more safer for our tourists. But they're not just in a small enclosure, they've actually got a huge amount of land in the Highlands. They have several acres of land, so we've not just enclosed them in quite a small space. In terms of the East National Park, the Cairngorms, there is a huge amount of rock formation. So there's not a huge amount of soil on that side of Scotland. So the vast majority of peat that we collect in Scotland is from the west. Where else can you find peat in Scotland? Anyone know? Whiskey. Peat is exactly what we smoke in a barrel in order for your whiskies to be nice and smoky. So that is where we gather the vast majority of peat in Scotland, is from the west.
No idea.
So we're just going to keep following the countryside at the minute. We're just going to keep following the countryside right until we get to Loch Lomond actually. When we get there, we'll park up and then I'll kind of let you know exactly what's going to happen from there. Does anyone have any questions so far? No? Okay. Guys, there is a reason why I went this way. We could have kept going straight forward, but it gives people the chance, especially if you're not going into the Highlands, to see the Highlands right in front of us. I've been thinking about doing an extra stop for you as well, which I'm going to do, which is obviously, as I said, to feed the Highland cows. But more so to the point because it's right next to the Highlands. So if you're not getting an opportunity on this trip to go to the Scottish Highlands, at least you're going to be able to see them. So this is the reason why I've come this way. So at the minute, we technically have the cusp of the Western Highlands in front of us. Scotland is 23 miles long by 4 miles wide at its broadest point. A lot of people believe that Loch Ness is our largest loch because it's our most famous, but that is false. I don't want to tell you too much about the loch itself because obviously quite a lot of you, if not all of you, will go on the boat. If you choose not to go on the boat, guys, please bear in mind that there's not a great deal to do. There's a couple of cafes and things that you can sit in whilst everyone's on the boat. As soon as you come off the boat, guys, please make sure you come straight back to the bus, as we're then going to leave and go to our lunch stop. Alright? So once again, for adults it's $15.50 and for children it's £10. You can buy cash or card, either is absolutely fine. The Sweeney's Cruise coming up on the right hand side with a kind of French canopy at the end, the yellow section. They're an absolutely lovely family. Always busy. So we're just going to go to the very top of the street. We're then going to do a little turn around the roundabout and come back down this way. So we'll be at the cruise in a couple of minutes.
So just a little bit about the Scottish Highlands, or better known as simply just the Highlands, is the largest geographic area in Scotland, covering nearly about 10,000 square meters. The Highlands of Scotland are sparsely populated, and it's one of the least populous areas in the whole of Europe, and the population density of the Scottish Highlands and Island is the lowest in Scotland at just 8 people per square kilometers. So the Highland is such a vast mountainous region, and it offers stunning landscapes and glorious wilderness to explore by foot and by bike. A lot of people actually go there for holidays, but you can explore hundreds of wonderful walks and trails there, and the good thing is that you will find hotels within the midst of the whole Highland. There are so many things that you can do in the Highlands, including the Kelpies. I took you guys there. I also take you guys to the Stirling Castle, and I also take you guys with as we feed the herricos. And then there's obviously Edinburgh Castle. We did manage to go there because we needed to book tickets 3 days in advance, and there was just a show. It was very fully packed. However, at the moment we are at Loch Lomond. Kind of okay. I'm saying it's kind of chilly, but it's kind of okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's not that bad, and at least it's not raining. It's gonna be worse. This is Loch Lomond, and Loch just means lake, and what I love about this is because it's fresh water. However, please stay tuned as they will tell us more history about the Loch.
Good morning everyone, welcome aboard the Estina. Before we go into Loch Lomond, we'd like to make you aware of some of the following safety regulations. In the unlikely event of an emergency, please follow all instructions from crew. There is sufficient buoyant apparatus on board for all passengers and crew. Please note, in the interest of safety, there is no smoking or vaping permitted during this cruise. During the cruise, the boat may rock due to passing power boats. Please take extra care if you're not in your seats. Can we also ask that children remain seated and supervised at all times throughout the cruise, and to refrain from running on the decks and stairs while the boat is in motion. The bar downstairs will shortly be opened for the sale of beers, spirits and soft drinks, with tea and coffee also available. Thank you for listening. Enjoy your cruise.
Thank you.
So we are crossing over Loch Lomond. It was such a great experience, such great hospitality. It was so calm and relaxing. I love the company. It was a bit noisy, but honestly, I really loved everything about this. It gives you, or it puts you in a space where you can really think about your life and God, and you know how big the world is. However, please continue watching as they'll tell us the history now.
Welcome to Loch Lomond, known as the Queen of Scottish Lochs. It's the largest expanse of fresh water in Great Britain, 23 miles long, 5 miles wide, and at the northern end, 636 feet deep, making it the third deepest in Scotland. The River Leven, which we're now leaving, is the loch's only outlet, running from here into the River Clyde and from there into the Atlantic Ocean. The area is home to an abundance of wildlife, and its history is as rich as the landscape that surrounds these mysterious waters. It's a place where kings have trod and outlaws have roamed. It has inspired writers, musicians and artists for generations. It was during the Victorian era that Loch Lomond gained renown. Visitors were drawn from across the world, thanks in large part to the romantic novels of the likes of Tobias Smollett and Sir Walter Scott. Day trippers would travel here by train from Glasgow to cruise aboard large paddle steamers like the one we're passing on the left. This is the Maid of the Loch, the very last paddle steamer to be built in Britain. She was built in 1953 on the River Clyde in Glasgow, which was, between the late 19th century and the early 1950s, the world's premier shipbuilding city. She represents those bygone days when she and many ships like her would sail the length of the loch filled with visitors. These ships also provided a valuable mail and transportation service to the local communities. As with many steam-powered vehicles, mounting maintenance and running costs saw the ship retired in 1981. She now stands as a monument to both Glasgow shipbuilding and Loch Lomond's steam-powered past. The large building we're passing on our left is Cameron House. Cameron House was built in the 18th century by the Smollett family, shipbuilders and merchants, whose most famous member was the poet and novelist Tobias Smollett. Such was the wealth and influence of the Smollets, the house has welcomed a few famous guests in its time. Former Prime Ministers Winston Churchill and Anthony Eden, as well as Empress Eugenie of France, have all visited here. As was the case with many ancestral homes across Britain, the costs of upkeep, staff and servants became unsustainable for the family. It was sold in 1986, and after extensive additions to the original building, Cameron House was converted into a luxury 5-star hotel. Auchendennan House was commissioned in 1860 by the Glasgow-based tobacco merchant George Martin, and was designed by famed Scottish architect John Burnett. During the Second World War, the house was used as a convalescent home for American servicemen coming from the front in France. After the war, as a goodwill gesture, the house was converted into a youth hostel thanks to a generous donation from American trade unions. The house remained a youth hostel until 2012, when it was bought over and converted into a 27-bedroom private home once again. Legend has it, the house marks the site of the hunting lodge of King Robert the Bruce, who owned much of the land and islands from Loch Lomond. These he used as his private hunting estate, introducing many deer and game birds to the islands and surrounding area. Looking now from the shore to our left, and to the shoreline on the far right, this is the widest part of Loch Lomond, at a distance of 5 miles. As you look towards each shore, you may be able to notice a line can be drawn between the hills on each side and the nearby islands ahead. This is the Highland boundary fault line. It's a geological fault created when the land that formed Scotland crashed together 500 million years ago. This line runs across the width of the country and separates the Highlands from the Lowlands. This can also be seen in the surrounding landscape as the rolling hills and meadows of the lowlands behind make way for the rugged peaks of the Highlands ahead. In just a few minutes, we will cross this boundary and enter the Scottish Highlands. This fact earns Loch Lomond the title, the Gateway to the Highlands. Revolution of 1800s, the meeting of these two contrasting landscapes was reflected in the meeting of two contrasting cultures. The hardier, more traditional Highland clans and the increasingly civilised and cultured lowlanders. This melting pot situation often led to disagreements and conflict. Not far from here, just behind the hills to our left, lies Glen Fruin, or the Glen of Sorrow. Glen Fruin is the site of one of the most gruesome battles in Scotland's history. In 1603, a dispute between two rival clans, Cahoon and MacGregor, culminated in the two meeting for a pitched battle in the glen. Despite being outnumbered 2 to 1, the MacGregors managed to flank the Cahoon forces, and what began as a battle became a massacre. Legend has it that the 200 to 300 casualties the Cahoon suffered, the MacGregors' casualties were but a handful. Some reports suggest that even the Cahoon women, who were there to tend the injured, were massacred along with their kinsmen. Such was the viciousness of the MacGregor onslaught that King James IV had their clan chiefs executed and decreed that the MacGregor name was to be abolished on pain of death, a judgment that would not be lifted until 1775, 172 years later. British Isles were formed 500 million years ago. It may surprise you to know that Loch Lomond only dates back 12,000 years to the end of the last ice age. As the ice that covered Scotland began to melt and recede, it gouged a deep canyon into the land. In its early years, Loch Lomond was connected to the sea before the land at its southern end rose up, trapping the water, which is now replenished by the burns and rivers of the surrounding hills and mountains. The Loch's catchment area for rainfall is 270 square kilometres, and its water level can fluctuate by as much as 3 metres between seasons. The Loch and its shores are home to a variety of mammals, including wildcats, deer and goats, as well as around 200 species of birds that inhabit or visit the Loch side. The most renowned of these being golden eagles, falcons and ospreys. The Loch itself is also home to around 14 species of fish, the most prominent being salmon and sea trout. There is also a rare type of freshwater herring called powan, which can only be found in 3 other lochs in Scotland.
I don't know what this guy is chasing. He's so fast. You know the other one behind. What are they chasing?
The left-hand side for the next 3 miles is home to 2 world-famous championship golf courses. The first is the Carrick, opened in 2006 and designed by the famed Canadian golf course architect Doug Carrick. The second, and most famous, is the Loch Lomond golf course, designed by the American golfer Tom Weiskopf. Golf magazine ranks the course in the top 50 in the world, and it has hosted various competitions over the years, including the Scottish Open and the Solheim Cup. The club is among the most exclusive in the world. The course record of 62 is held by South African golfer Retief Goosen. The large mountain with its head in the clouds is the iconic Ben Lomond. Ben Lomond stands at 3,192 feet and is the most southerly of Scotland's 282 Munros, a Munro being a Scottish mountain over 3,000 feet high. Its name in Gaelic means Beacon Mount, and it was a useful northern marker for travellers. It may surprise you to know that it is in fact the loch that is named after the mountain. There are a number of Ben Lomans around the world, in Tasmania, New Zealand, California and Utah, all of them named after the one you see here today by Scottish settlers keen to remind themselves of a little bit of home. There are 23 main islands on Loch Lomond, and each seems to have its own story to tell. Over the centuries, the islands have become home to what was to be kept safe or secret. Monasteries, castles, and even on a number of islands, illicit whisky stills. The largest of these islands we are passing on our left. This is Inchmurren. Inchmurren is 1.5 miles long by half a mile wide and is the largest inland island in Great Britain. The island has been inhabited since the 6th century, when the monks of St Mirren set up a monastery here. Between the trees on the bank you may be able to spot the ruined remains of Lennox Castle. This castle was built by Duncan, the 8th Earl of Lennox, in 1393. The castle was, for a short time, during the latter years of its existence, the residence of Mary Queen of Scots. Much later, another famous visitor to the island was legendary Scottish outlaw Rob Roy MacGregor, who led a night raid on the island, which was by this time a base for government forces. He and his clansmen relieved the island of its cattle, as well as all the island's boats, to prevent pursuit. Today the island is privately owned by the Scott family. It has a small farm, hotel and restaurant, and also houses Scotland's oldest, and quite possibly bravest, Naturists Club. It's lasted for 400 years between the 11th and 15th centuries. At its heart lay Loch Lomond, which the family chose as their base. All who lived in the area did so under the protection of the Earl. This included 2 of the most famous names in Scottish history. During the Scottish Wars of Independence, both William Wallace and Robert the Bruce were separately given permission by Malcolm, 5th Earl of Lennox, to use Loch Lomond side as a bolt hole and hiding place during this violent period in Scotland's history.
Okay.
William Wallace's presence in the area is evidenced in Wallace's Isle at the north end of Loch Lomond, where, legend has it, he once took refuge. Robert the Bruce relied heavily upon the Lennox family and their forces during his campaign to become King of Scots. He commended the men of Lennox for their bravery during the Battle of Bannockburn, at which he finally took the throne in 1314. In his latter years as king, it is known he and the Earl hunted together in the surrounding countryside and on the islands.
I feel like Scotland has so much dark history. It's always killing and some type of, I don't even know how to explain it. But interesting, quite interesting, very interesting.
At this point, guys, I was just so exasperated with the noise because I've been to so many public places, especially when it's a service being offered. People really respect others, but unfortunately on this cruise it was just very noisy, so I couldn't go ahead and finish with all the history that they were telling us, because we all paid to be on this cruise, and the one thing you can do is just listen to the history. However, it was unfortunate, but I hope you have listened and heard a few things that you needed to learn.
I think tourism really has money. I'm just thinking of the people that own this cruise ships. You have people paying, I think, like £15 per person, and You just make a small round turn, a small turn around the whatever this they call this Loch or whatever. Give a little bit of history on Britain, Scotland itself, and you got some cash. We are a lot on this boat. I don't know. We are quite a number. Maybe 100 of us or 150. So you can imagine, like just taking tourists around, asking for a fee. Like people are willing to pay to know more about the area. So take advantage, man. It's quite windy. I want to go upstairs.
So overall, there are so many things to do in the Highlands, because even movies like Harry Potter were filmed throughout the Scottish Highlands. But depending on what you want, remember to book, because places are always filled. They are always very busy, so you might want to book in advance. And also bear in mind the Scottish weather. It's always cold or raining, or it's just a funny weather, so you want to take all those things in consideration. So you might want to visit the castles, the Highland lanes, that is like where the Harry Potter movie was filmed. They also have Highland beaches, and then another different lochs, and yeah, it's quite interesting. But I'm gonna take you to feed the haricus, so please stay tuned and watch the next video, because there are a few of us that have never seen haricus, and you don't want to see that. You don't want to miss out.
It's quite cold.
So if you really want to experience the Highlands, I would advise you go for hiking. But one thing people did not prepare me is that when you're touring around, you're literally walking around. I was so tired of walking. I was not even keen to, go for a hiking experience somewhere in the Highlands or something, because no, girl, no.
Approaching the cruise aboard the Estina, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of Sweeney's Cruise Company to thank you all for sailing with us. We hope you enjoyed your cruise in Loch Lomond. And ask all passengers to make sure you have your personal belongings and put rubbish in the rubbish bins provided. Please take care on the stairs and steps when disembarking the vessel. Thank you.
What I really love is that even if you're traveling alone or it's just the two of you, you don't need to be scared or afraid, because the places that you book, you'll be traveling with other tourists that want to see all these attractions. So you guys will be a group, so there's really nothing to be scared of. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've learned a lot about the Highlands, and I can't wait to see you guys in my next video, because I will take you to the Highland cruise. If you've watched this far, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do not forget to subscribe. Leave me some lovely comments and give me a thumbs up for the algorithm. Coming up next, I still have a little bit more of Scotland history to tell you guys about, so please stay tuned.